Wall Street Wrap-Up is supported by Bamboolas, featuring live music and coming soon, tapas and wine upstairs. Bamboolas, the heartbeat of Frenchman Street.
This week on Wall Street Wrap-Up, the long-term credit rating of the United States has been downgraded by one credit rating agency. So, will more follow? Plus, what will lower credit mean for the country, such as borrowing costs and a ballooning national deficit? But also, what does it mean for you? And the government released their jobs report showing how many jobs were added and in what sectors for last month. We'll tell you, including the unemployment rate and just how many people are now re-entering the job market. And are there more people sitting still on the sidelines? Well, tonight we're going to be talking jobs, how to get them, how to keep them. Plus, do employees or the employer have the upper hand in job demands? Tonight, we're going to be talking with the CEO and founder of LaSalle Networks, Tom Gimbel. Forbes magazine has named LaSalle best professional recruiting firm in the country, and Fortune magazine named LaSalle the best medium workplace to work. We'll have the CEO and the founder of us with us tonight. I'm Andre Laborde. We've got these stories and more. It's Friday and it's time for Wall Street Wrap-Up. Hi, welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up. It's Friday, August the 4th. Well, this week, one month ended and another began. Credit rating agency Fitch has downgraded the long-term credit worthiness of the United States, citing the erosion of governance, such as the continuing raising of the debt ceiling, rising deficits, and of fiscal challenges, such as the upcoming insolvency of the Social Security and Medicare systems if it's not addressed. Now, the size of the debt has doubled since 2007, and with escalating interest costs, the size, if not addressed, is going to only accelerate. Plus, the possibility of the country still slipping into a recession, where the GDP will be dropping and instability of paying off government debt that is owed is now a major concern by either prioritizing paying government programs or paying the interest costs that are even growing higher. Well, the highest rating you can have is a AAA, but with a drop of a credit rating, higher interest cost will now be added to what the government already pays. So what does that mean for you? Such as, an example, the higher cost a homeowner would have or should have is at 21%. Now that's the principal that their interest and that their income is going towards home ownership. But new buyers today, with rising interest rates, will be having a greater percentage of 36% going towards their home payments. And speaking of home ownership and payments, the new 30-year fixed rate for buying a home today is now at 7.2%. That's up, by the way, 2.25% in just the last 30 days alone. And by the way, it's almost a certainty to continue to go even higher. Well, how did our money do this week? All stock sectors ended in the red for the week. The top sector for the week were communication services, and the sector laggards for the week were utilities and technology. A top stock for the week were Amazon and the NASDAQ. They posted the worst week since March. Well, this week, the Dow Jones closed today at 35,067, and that was down 1.1% for the week. S&P 500 closed today at 4478, down almost 2.25% for the week. And the NASDAQ, they closed today at 13,909, which was down 2.8% for the week. And today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released unemployment and hiring data for last month, July. The country picked up 187,000 jobs last month, but they had to readjust downward jobs for May and for June by almost 50,000 jobs. Now, the unemployment rate for July was at 3.5%. The labor participation rate is now at 62.6%. Last month, the largest sector was in the health services sector, picking up 100,000 jobs for July. Construction added another 19,000, and leisure and hospitality, such as restaurants and hotels, well, they added 17,000 jobs for last month. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has now said that they will extend the oil cut that they put in last month in July to at least through September, if not even later. So the price of gas today nationwide is just over $3.80 a gallon nationwide. That was up from last week by 30 cents, but it's down from 1 year ago at this time. California passed the $5 a gallon mark this week, and Washington State, well, they're right behind them. Well, since the pandemic, working back in the office is different in the country. It depends where you live. Baskings Analytics has found that those in the Midwest spend about 60% of their time in the office, while those in the Northeast, they spend the least amount of time back in the office with a rate of about 24%. And July's unemployment numbers were released today at 3.5%. And wherever you go, there's help wanted signs. Forbes magazine has called LaSalle Network the best professional recruiting firm in America. And its founder and CEO is Tom Gimbel. Now, best of all, Tom's with us tonight. Hi, Tom. Welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up.
Great to be with you.
Tom, do you find people, clients, prospective people who are looking for work today, are they making more demands than before? And I ask it this way. I mean, I don't want to go into the office. I want to stay home more. Who's got more of a driver's position?
Well, I think now it's returning back to a more typical situation where the employer sets the boundaries of what they want. But for the past 2 years, since 2021, it's really been the employee in the driver's seat. Now, part of that was obviously due to the COVID pandemic and employees being afraid and not wanting to go in. Now we're in this situation that employees just feel, hey, I can say what I want and I'm going to get it. And when you have record low unemployment like we do right now and continue to have, there is a little bit more power that the employee has. But over the course of the past 6 months, we've seen that greatly return to normal, where employers are saying we want people in the office, or at the very least hybrid 2-3 days a week in the office, and employees are going along with that program.
Do you find that Zoom is more harm than good, or more good than harm? And here's where I'm thinking. You know, we talk about diversity in the workplace, you know, and diversity is good. Okay, diversity, whether it be in gender, or religion, or whatever, in the next cubicle. But today, with Zoom, we're not getting that, or other things. What are your thoughts on Zoom?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think number one, Zoom is a net positive. I think the fact that we can have conversations, heck, like we're doing right now, that's much more technologically savvy without me having to go into a studio. I think for companies that have offices in other cities, it's a great thing versus a traditional conference call. So I think that that's a positive. Now, on the social issues that you mentioned, I'm a big proponent in what you said, and I think that being in person, now there's people who will say, hey, you can hire people of color because now you have outreach where they can work remotely from where they live, so you can get more people of color, more women, more different age brackets. I disagree with that. I think you may have more exposure to people, but they're still working remotely, and the impact of diversity isn't hitting one another and isn't hitting the company. And I think that when you have to sit next to somebody at a desk, when you have to go into the cafeteria, when you're at a company event, and you're learning about people's ethnic backgrounds, the gender diversity, age differences, when you're going out for a beer after work, when you're having coffee in the lunchroom, I think all of those things are what create empathy, and it creates understanding and knowledge. And so I really believe that we shouldn't divert to Zoom out of ease. We should use Zoom when there's no other choice.
Tom, I'm also thinking of the area of, let's say, new workers, whether it be in sales or whatever. The younger worker learns from the older worker, or the person who's been in that position longer, of what to do or also what not to do.
Yeah, I think it really diverts back to our employees company first or individual first. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say, well, new people need to learn. Well, who do they learn from? Just like you said, they learn from more experienced professionals in their space. And quite frankly, if you aren't in the same office, all of a sudden you're going to put these higher level people on a pedestal, and people are going to motivate to not ever be in the office, and you're never going to have a circle of knowledge that gets fulfilled to the next corporate generation. I think that's really dangerous. And you're also going to lack the competitiveness that exists within a company, not negative competition, healthy competition, where people want to do better than one another when they're hearing it, they're seeing it. You want to dress better, you want to look better, you want to get more of your boss's time. There's this drive to be number one, especially in a marketing role or a sales role or a client delivery role. And I think when we don't have that, the corporation as a whole suffers.
Do you find that all type of sectors are hiring right now? And here's what I'm thinking of. We hear of the tech sector is laying off employees, but we also find that hotel, restaurant, tourism is in badly need of employees.
So what big tech did, and it's not all of technology, it's big tech, right? We saw it with Netflix and we saw it with Google, and Microsoft just laid off more folks, and Salesforce. What they're doing is they're using, listen, the economy right now, record low unemployment, stock market's high. You tell me where there's an economic problem. There isn't one. And so what we've seen is companies use big tech, a perceived economic problem, to make up for the fact that they hired way too many people during COVID, and they have way too many layers of people that aren't doing enough. And what we've got is a lack of productivity of people because of remote work, because there's too many people for the amount of jobs that there were. And so now what we've got a situation of companies, financially prudent companies, have to lay those people off. But they're still hiring. They're going to replace their good people. They're going to hire people when they leave. They've got to hire in either sales roles or engineering roles. And employees don't stay at companies no matter how good the employee is for forever. So I see it across the board: hospitality, technology, manufacturing, distribution, professional services. We're seeing them hire. Now, it may not be in bulk. You may not see them hiring 500 people or 1,000 people, but they're all hiring right now.
When you brought up about Salesforce, the CEO of Salesforce is Mark Benioff. I just recently read where he wants people in and he promises, look, if you come into the office, he will donate to a charity of your choice. I'm thinking, if you're going to donate to me. You know, I'll be the one, you know.
Yeah, I think when you get a behavior like that, you're rewarding typical behavior, and you're feeding into this problem we have, that the employees think that we can get whatever we want. And I think you're exactly right. Of a donation to charity is great, but not with my dollars. And if you're going to pay more money, pay me more money to come in. And I think that's the challenge. You know, Benioff was, what he said when they did their first round of layoffs was, we did analysis and we found out that 90% of our sales were coming from 50% of our salespeople. Well, you know, no one tracks data as well as Salesforce. They've known that for forever. What they thought was the other 50% were going to rise and companies were continue to bring in more Salesforce users, and that didn't happen. So you lay people off and then you hire better people. And, you know, there's an old expression: whenever a company does a layoff, they don't round up their best people first.
It's a good point, because I remember when Jack Welch used to be the CEO of General Electric, what he did was he told all division managers that even if the bottom 10% are good people, bottom 10% goes every year. Well, that puts such a fear in their divisions. You don't want to be that 10th man out of 10. You want to be always number 9 or higher, or you get the axe.
You're exactly right. And what that does is it says is that, number one, if somebody's in the bottom 10%, even if they're doing well, air quotes, right? Mm-hmm. I think it ends up being that they're still the bottom 10%. They're still the worst of the good people. And can we get somebody in that 10th spot who could rise up to number 6 or number 5 or number 4 or number 9 or number 8? And that 10th person knew what that was at stake, and they couldn't get there. And I think that's the motivation. That's not mean. That's saying we're all here to grow our business. And if there isn't that fight, not even necessarily like what you're talking about and what Jack Welch did, not even to be number 1, just to not be number 10. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a sense of Darwinism, of survival of the fittest, of saying we want people who have the fight to succeed. And that is, I get that the world's gotten a little more sensitive and softer in a lot of ways for the better, but I think in some situations when it comes to capitalism, it's for the worse, is that everybody doesn't get a free ride. If you're getting paid, you have to deliver at a level that management feels is worthy of continuing your employment, not just because you're a nice person.
Recently, the Teamsters just struck a contract with UPS drivers. And the head of the Teamsters makes no bones about that. He wants Amazon drivers to be joining the Teamsters so that he too can, you know, work against Amazon for doing that. Can you can you price yourself out of the market eventually where the consumer, because somebody's going to have to pay the freight, literally, on that, of being able to pay for these drivers. So that means you have to increase prices to a level that they have to pay for the drivers. Will people go, I'm not paying this for a product, even though that I know it's got to be going toward higher pay?
Well, I think number one, you're not going to trick me to say something bad about the Teamsters, right? I mean,
you're too slick,
I think
Tom. This isn't your first rodeo, okay? You're too slick. I tried, but you got me.
I watched the Irishman in Hoffa. I'm not saying anything bad about the Teamsters.
You're in Chicago, where they play rough. I understand.
Exactly. But I think in all seriousness, they're great guys, and I'm making a joke. But I think that when you talk about can something be outpriced, I was reading an article the other day, and I think it hit dead on this topic, and that is, people expected to get higher wages. They didn't expect goods to go up. And I think what we're seeing is that people are making more money, but they don't have any more take-home pay because everything's gotten more expensive, and that's inflation, and that is you flood the market with more cash, that you're going to have to raise the prices, and that's what's happening. And where that point becomes that people stop hitting click on their phone to buy everything from Amazon because even those prices are going up. I mean, we all do it. We click on Amazon and we see the same item listed at 4 different prices. Mm-hmm. And it's getting to the point of sometimes being confusing. Where are you going to walk down to Walgreens? Are you going to walk down to CVS? You're going to walk down to the dollar store and say, you know what? Maybe I can get this cheaper locally that doesn't have the delivery cost, that doesn't have all these challenges. Because it used to be Amazon delivered for free. Now the cost may be buried of shipping in the price of the item. So I think we have a more sophisticated buyer, and we've got more competition in everything from cars to aspirin to Coca-Cola. And I think people are going to start being bargain hunters again. And I think you are going to see different things get priced up, whether it's airline tickets, which we know are astronomical, hotel rooms, or a 6-pack of soda.
And it's an interesting point, Tom, about that, because economist Milton Friedman one time said there's no such thing as a free lunch. It was true then and it's true today. So if they price themselves, we've had a number of times the former CEO of McDonald's on the show, Ed Renzi, and we've talked about how, at one time starter jobs were kids in high school were at McDonald's. Well, today, it's hard to having a Happy Meal when you got to pay the kind of prices that you're paying. So a lot of franchisees are converting to kiosks because of paying $15 to $17 an hour for a starter job. So do you think something like this, of what you're talking about, will only accelerate the driverless cars or AI, artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think there's a couple layers there. I was reading something the other day, and it said people don't love electric cars, people love Teslas, right?
Sure.
and there's a reason. Why is there a tip jar at Starbucks but not a tip jar at McDonald's, right? Why do we have these perceptions that certain jobs are worthy of a tip and certain jobs aren't, when they're basically the same things? Why is one car something I want and another car isn't? I think what we are getting to the point of that if something can be automated, why wouldn't we do it, right? And I think I always draw the comparison to our own homes. If I didn't have to pay somebody to cut my yard and I could buy a machine that did it for free or that did it autonomously, would I do that and save the $30 a week or whatever it costs? I probably would. Mm-hmm. And I think those are, to pay $15 to have somebody walk my dog in Manhattan makes sense. To pay $45 to have somebody walk my dog in Manhattan maybe doesn't. And I do believe that there is a point of return, not a point of no return, but a point of return where things get to be too expensive that people look for alternatives. The alternative is either A, doing it yourself, mm-hmm. or B, automating it. And I think that when we get the opportunity to automate things, we do it for ourselves personally. And if that's the case, it'll end up happening in jobs. But I don't think it's the end of human beings working. I think it just creates other jobs.
Yeah. There was a recent article I think it was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about a week ago. And it said, basically the op-ed said, we need more immigrants because the birth rate is going down. Well, based on what you're saying, and with autonomous AI and machinery, are we going to need, and I know it sounds bad because you always want to build up more people in a country, but do we really need the employees if we're going to be having either machines or AI or other things that will now take the jobs away from what people are having to do now?
No, I think we most definitely will, and I think there's so many different sides of immigration, but I think if cars become electric, then you're going to need more electricity. You're going to have to man the grids. There's going to be more technical jobs on that side of things. If you have AI doing something, you're going to have computers that, what does AI run on? A computer. You're going to have more computers break down. We're going to have to produce more computers. Yeah, we're going to have computers that make them, but people have to do a lot of that work to get that going. And then you have repair people, right? Look at all the iPhones came out. There's a repair shop for iPhones on every corner for the screens and protective cases and all these other things. There's always something that gets created. So I'm not overly worried about that. On the thing of immigration, there's two types of immigration that are problems. One is the one that everybody talks about, and that's people coming over the southern border, and that's for more of the blue collar jobs. And when you talk about the hospitality industry, that's what feeds into that, and that's why there's such a huge shortage. Then there's the other side of that, and that's the technical jobs where we educate foreign people in our colleges and our universities, and they can't get what's called an H-1B visa anymore, and they have to go back home. So we educate them in our universities and our colleges, but we don't let them stay here to do the work, and we have this technology shortage. And that's the two big challenges that we have. And then we have really the third one, which is the blue collar, not necessarily in the service areas like hotels, but throwing a hammer. We've got a $1 trillion infrastructure package to repair highways and pull internet cables and to do all these things, and we don't have the workers to do them. And now we need that same influx, and we need immigrants to come here and do a lot of that labor, and we should welcome that.
What about college degrees today, Tom? I mean, at one time, I'll use the term before COVID as compared to post-COVID. I mean, are more jobs that are being advertised today or employees needed that a college degree is not needed?
Well, what I would say is record low. The expression desperate times call for desperate measures. So when you have record low unemployment for a continuous period of time, you give up on your qualifications. And what you need, what makes someone qualified for a job. So we saw a college degree go down in importance when you couldn't find people. However, there are definitely certain jobs that require a college degree. And there's also one of the things that people don't want to talk about of why a college degree is valued is it shows starting something, investing your time and your money, and finishing it. And there's a lot of people that will start a college education, spend 20, 30, 40, 50, $60,000 or more and not finish. And it shows a lack of fortitude and a will a determination to finish that. And I think that you see, what I see in my job every day is a lot of job hoppers and people who don't stick with companies, and they're quick to point blame at everybody else why it didn't work out. The boss was unfair. The company wasn't doing well. I didn't like the trajectory of the department. Instead of the resilience that has existed for over a century before of I've got this job, I'm going to put everything I have into it, I'm going to get promoted, I'm going to get a raise, I'm going to do well, and we've lost a little bit of that in this country of resiliency of the average worker. So I'm a big believer in that. There are a lot of jobs that don't require college degrees, and they're out there, like you said, in the hotel industry and restaurants and in the service and the trades. But there's also a lot of jobs that do require a degree in marketing and human resources and sales and operations and such. So I'm not talking to the 1 in 100 that doesn't need the degree to succeed in those fields. I'm talking to the 99 that do.
Yeah. In your experience, what have you found to be what you should say in a job interview or not say, or what should you do or not ask for in a job interview?
Yeah, I think number one, you can never fail at knowing you. And I think that when a lot of people want to embellish their accomplishments, they go into on paper, they go into an interview and they fail at themselves. What comes out of their mouth is contradictory to what's on paper. So I believe that you really need to be honest about what you achieved for two reasons. Number one, it's always good to tell the truth and number two, because you're going to be held to achieving what you said you've done someplace else. And the quickest way to lose a job is not do what you say you could do. And so I think that you really need to know what you've accomplished. You need to commit it to memory and you need to talk about that, what's on there really successfully. So I've seen a lot of people that think telling a white lie about what they achieved is okay, and they end up getting into a lot of trouble about that. And I think as you go through the interview process, you want to ask the same questions to multiple people in the organization, because you're also interviewing them. And you want to find out if everybody's saying the same story about what goes on in the company. And you want to know about promotion tracks, and you want to know about the culture of the organization. And a lot of people, they don't ask questions. They end up falling back and thinking the interview is just about the company interviewing them. But companies want to hear, managers want to hear how creative you are, what types of thought process you have. Have you put thought and research into this before you came in, and asked really good, coherent questions?
Tom, I could talk to you more, and I sure hope you come back. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, if you've got a question, maybe a comment about the show, we'd love to hear from you. Make it concise, make it piffy, and write us at andre@benacapital.com. So let's take a look at the markets heading into next week. But first, what type of food service opened for the very first time on this day, August the 4th, in 1930, by Michael Cullen of Queens, New York? We've got the answer, and it's coming up. Well, what type of food service opened up on this day, August the 4th, in 1930, by Michael Cullen in Queens, New York? It was the very first U.S. supermarket. It was called King Cullen. In fact, a little bit of this, Michael Cullen was the son of Irish immigrants, and he was fed up trying to persuade his boss at the A&P and then at his next job at Kroger's that grocery shoppers would actually like to serve themselves if someone would build a bright, roomy, organized store. Imagine that. Well, last night, finally, the governor of Oregon has just signed a bill to allow Oregonians the ability to pump their own gas. Yes, it now gives them the choice of either doing it themselves or not. And the first time, by the way, in 72 years that's changed. That leaves only New Jersey as the only state to restrict pumping it yourself. That would be a good trivia question. And that's a wrap-up on Wall Street Wrap-Up. Join me next week when we talk about the economy, the second half of 2023, and more with Tulane University's professor of business at the Freeman School of Business, Peter Ricchiuti. He's always got great fun talking with Peter, and he's also the founder, and he runs the Tulane's Birkenroad Report that we'll also be discussing in quite a bit in detail. That's Peter Ricchiuti next week. And that's our show for this Friday, August the 4th. Our thanks to Tom Gimbel for being with us tonight, but as always, we appreciate you for allowing us into your homes this evening. Have a fun weekend with the ones you love. I'll see you next week. Remember, if it's Friday, it's Wall Street Wrap-Up. I'm Andre Laborde. Always remember, money never sleeps. Good night.
Wall Street Wrap-Up is supported by Bamboolas, featuring live music and coming soon, tapas and wine upstairs. Bamboolas, the heartbeat of Frenchman Street.